let's talk about Star Wars. Guys, stop me if you've heard this before, but for a while now, Star Wars has had a bit of a stigma of having a bit of a toxic fan base. And this fan base has notoriously been problematic for a while. Let's just say that, for a while. Now, one of the issues I've had with Star Wars, and there have been many, is how much the powers that be, whether it's George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, anybody, how quiet they typically have been when it had come to the harassment to the stars and the cast and people of Star Wars. During Obi-Wan, we did start to finally hear them say a little bit more, right? They finally started to speak up a little bit, and that was cool. It was nice. I felt it was a little tempered, but they started to kind of push back against toxic fandom. And let me be very clear about this. When we're talking about toxic fandom, because somebody's going to come on here, maybe on the replay, and be like, it's not toxic if I don't like a character and if I don't like the writing. No, it's not. And no one's talking to you. We're talking to the people that go out of their way to say racist comments, to say sexist comments, to have those type of things that have nothing to do with the actual, plot or the structure. We're not talking about the people that have constructive criticism. We're talking to the jerks that are out there that are trolling, that are, attacking people on their race, gender, sexuality, etc. Those are the people that we're talking that are sexist. So if that does not apply to you, then be quiet, because we're not talking to you. But a hit dog will holler. So just kind of keep that in mind too. So with that said, recently, Kathleen Kennedy has come out and said some things. Kathleen Kennedy, in case you did not know, is the president of Lucasfilm right now. She's the top, boss lady right now. And she had something to say about the toxicity that has been going on. And according to her, it was directed towards the women of Star Wars. And she says here, she responded to the toxic side of the Star Wars fandom. My belief is that storytelling storytelling does need to be representative of all people. That's an easy decision for me. Operating within these giant franchises now with social media and the level of expectation, it's terrifying. I think Leslie, that's the director of the Acolyte series, I think Leslie has struggled a little bit with it. I think a lot of the women who step into Star Wars struggle with this a bit more because of the fan base being so male dominated. They sometimes get attacked, the women, in ways that can be quite personal. That is probably the most watered down way to say that, yeah, your fan base is sexist at times, a lot of times. And, the attacks have been so bad that it's driven people to go offline. We know about Kelly Marie Tran, during The Last Jedi. Fans attacked her and it was just terrible. Recently, so they're talking about the female director for the Acolyte. I don't know of any specifics, but I'm assuming that maybe she got some backlash in some way. I haven't heard about it, so I can't say for sure, but I'm assuming that's what prompted Kathleen Kennedy to talk about how they are struggling. Some of the females are struggling. Now, a very prominent person you might think about is Daisy Ridley, aka Rey. Now, I remember, and maybe some of y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, I remember there sure was a lot of pushback on the socials when it came to Daisy Ridley becoming the new face of the new trilogy. Now, we all probably can agree that the new trilogy, the latest one, fell short incredibly. Now, A New Force Awakens, I liked it. I thought that was a solid film. It was cool. It came back with the nostalgia. Fine. Last Jedi, I personally liked it at the time, but the way that it fit into the overall trilogy, no good. No good. We're not even going to talk about the last movie because it was just bad. Period. But I do recall Daisy Ridley was getting some pushback. Oh, she's a Mary Sue. Oh, she's not this. She's this. She's that. People was giving her a lot of flack too. Now, what's interesting here, because we got to go back to the past. Daisy Ridley threw water on those sexist flames. In an old interview, this was, I want to say, last year, she said, I think when she was asked about the toxicity and all that, she said, I think my take is things get blown out of proportion, and the interactions I've ever had with people have been nothing but wonderful and supportive. I've only ever been embraced, and I think we're going to make a great film. Now, keep in mind, Daisy Ridley is going to be doing another Star Wars film. And according to her, she's saying that she ain't getting no hate. According to her, things are great. Now, I don't know if she's on social media, because that could be a contributing factor. If you're not on social media, if you're not checking your DMs, if you're not reading the comments, it's very easy to live in a bubble to believe that nobody is saying anything about you. Now, I'm not mad at what she's doing, because she probably is being strategic about this. She's probably learning from someone like Brie Larson, where when you sit here and go antagonize, and let's be very honest, when you go antagonize the white males online that are toxic, so I'm being very specific with who I'm talking about, when you antagonize that demographic, it potentially could hurt your future, whether it's in Star Wars or other roles. So I could see how she will want to water that down a little bit and just be like, I don't know what y'all talking about. Sexism? Where? Not for me. Cool. But as we mentioned before, it's definitely been an issue for other women in Star Wars. Most notably, the director of Daisy Ridley's upcoming Star Wars movie. And this was from like an old interview. What's her name? Charmine Chinoy. In an interview earlier this year on CNN, she said, I'm very thrilled about the project. This is the Rey movie that's coming up, because I feel what we're about to create is something very special. And we're in 2024 now. And it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape a story in a galaxy far, far away. And as the article says, her comments sent the social media outrage machine into overdrive as they stripped her statement out of context, which, of course, toxic people normally do. So, and this director, I believe she's of Indian descent. She received a whole lot of hatred, a whole lot of nasty comments, a whole lot of all that stuff. So it's interesting to me that this fandom, and again, I'm going to take Daisy Ridley for her word, but it's interesting to me that maybe for whatever reason, they only spared her. I don't believe it, because I remember when the movie was announced, they was getting on her too. But let's not forget that this is not a matter of just being sexist towards the women. Nah, they sexist and they racist. They equal opportunity bigots. Okay, they don't care. And this was something I had to write. Your boy wrote this all the way in 2022. Y'all remember when Moses Ingram was catching all hell from those racist fans. And I brought up how Finn was getting all that racism from those racist fans. And how Kelly Marie Tran got all that, backlash for those sexist, racist fans. And it goes back. Feel free to go read this article if you get a chance, because this was the first time someone in Star Wars from the higher ups actually said anything in defense. what was the brother's name that played Jar Jar Binks? He also faced ridiculous amounts of criticism that almost broke him. Ahmad Best, thank you so much. And that was before social media. That was before social media. They was breaking folks. Something is wrong with the fandom of Star Wars. Now, let me put some positives, because y'all know I try to be fair. Kathleen Kennedy has done a fantastic job, I would say, with making things more diverse on the TV side. When it comes to the TV side, we're getting all types of shows with all types of characters from all different types of walks of life. I'm not mad at that. I am mad that y'all not bringing Mace Windu back yet, though. That I do have a problem. I'm not going to forgive y'all for that. And I don't like the fact that every black person in Star Wars just so happens to know each other. Yeah, you thought we didn't notice, but we did. Okay, Lando. But I will say that the TV side of Star Wars is headed in a better direction when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and equity. Ooh, I know that made somebody shiver. Yes, DEI. Ugh. But I think it's important to realize that the fan base probably didn't get that way without reason. And a lot of times you have to go back to the original source. And it was interesting to me that while Kathleen Kennedy was making this comment, George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, he too was making comments on the racial and sexual criticisms that have been lodged at him about Star Wars. And I think that this brings an interesting aspect to the conversation that I want to kind of highlight real quick. So he was at the Cannes Film Festival, and he was very candid about criticisms of his first 6 Star Wars movies. So let's be clear, this is he's addressing, the prequels and the original trilogy. Okay, so only the first 6 movies. So George Lucas said, the critics, they would say it's all white men. Most of the people are aliens. The idea is you're supposed to accept people for what they are, whether they're big and furry or whether they're green or whatever. The idea is all people are equal. Are they? Are they really in Star Wars? Before I get into what I think about his comment, I'm gonna give him his chance to say everything, and then we'll go into it. He says, as for the issue of race, in the first movie, in the first trilogy, there were a few Tanzanians who were dark, and in the second movie, I had Billy Williams, and in the prequels, which they're also criticizing, I had Sam Jackson. He wasn't a scoundrel like Lando. He was one of the top Jedi. In other words, what y'all mad about? I had my magical Negroes. I met my quota. What y'all mad about? He also responded to the criticism about the depiction of women in Star Wars, saying, who do you think the heroes are in the stories? What do you think Princess Leia was? She's the head of the rebellion. And it's the same with Queen Amidala. Let's kind of go back here. George Lucas, who, by the way, is married to a black woman. Good for him. It also doesn't mean anything. George Lucas is coming from an older mindset of what inclusion, diversity, and equity actually means. Damn it. Oh, DEI again. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. But he's coming from an older mindset of what that means. To him, I gave y'all dark-skinned people that were background characters. Isn't that enough? I gave y'all Billy D. Williams. He had a couple lines. Isn't that enough? I gave y'all Sam Jackson for a couple minutes here and there, and I ain't bringing them back, but isn't that enough? And the women, they were the leaders of stuff. Yep, sure, you're right. But were those movies about any of those people? Let me show y'all something. We're talking about his first 6 movies. Y'all let me know what you see here. White man. White. White man, white man. Little green. White. Yeah. White. Oh, splash of black and green. White. So, what George Lucas is missing, what George Lucas is not understanding, and I feel like somebody should have explained that criticism to him a little better, is that it's not the fact that we're saying Star Wars is only all white people. That's not what we're saying. The criticism is that in all your movies, just those 6, they were all white centered. They all focused on white centered males. Now, do you think there's any coincidence that the movies that ushered in and became the foundation of the franchise of white males, do you think that there's any coincidence that the fan base has any relation to it? Because if you give people 6 movies over the course of 30, 40 years that center around white males, and all of a sudden you start sprinkling in a little color, sprinkling in a little bit more diversity, again, not just in the background, but in terms of the actual stories being told, do you think that fandom that grew fond and related to that one demographic that they could relate to, you don't think that they feel some type of way about that? You don't feel like they'd feel, I don't know, they're taking our jobs. I mean, they're taking our movies. You don't think that that backlash would exist? And a lot of this stems from, and no, I'm not calling George Lucas racist. I'm not saying that. But this stems from the fact that people have held on to an outdated version of racism and sexism. Now, racism is way deeper and way more complex, and I would argue had a longer history in this country. Because keep in mind, women got their rights before black people did, okay? But when it comes to racism, the problem that people like George Lucas probably have is that he's holding on to maybe like level 2 racism, and he's trying to avoid that. Level 1 was basically slavery. Okay. Level 1 was, oh man, black people are animals. Okay. Listen, we moved past that. But if you look over the course of history, racism in America has evolved. It evolves over time. We go through slavery and we're like, all right, man, all right. Y'all were like animals, and no, we're not on that no more with slaves, but you guys are still inferior. You're only 3/5 of a person. We go through segregation. That's a different level of racism. And then you have racism in systems, and you have racism in policing and housing and banking. It evolves. Some people still hold on to the idea that racism only means the KKK level of racism. That's what some people think it is. No, racism is deeper than just that. It's deeper than just, I hate all black people. No, it ain't got to be all that. You don't have to have a white hood. That's a deep level, but that ain't it. You could be a nice racist. You could be an unknowing racist. It happens. And this is why I would love for George Lucas to maybe kind of, I don't know, just have a conversation with somebody to get a little bit more educated on this, because he clearly missed the mark. He didn't realize that just by having a black person on staff, that doesn't mean that they're equal. What did he just say? His words. The idea is all people are equal. Lando ain't equal. Mace Windu ain't equal. What are you talking about? They wasn't equal. Kelly Tran's character was not equal. Okay, he didn't do that one, but still, I'm just saying, like, that just meeting a quota is not equality. So yes, the Star Wars movies, they were about Luke, they were about Anakin. That's fine. I'm not saying that that was wrong. I'm not saying that George Lucas was supposed to have a black person or a white woman I'm not saying none of that. I'm saying own up to what your movies were. They were centered on white males. It is what it is. But don't try to pretend that Star Wars was so equally balanced when it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was about them white dudes having family problems. That's all. That's all it was. You sprinkled in a green person and you sprinkled in a couple of the blacks. That's all. And that's fine. But say that. Don't try and act like you was woke back then, because he wasn't. Anyway, I'm not surprised that the fandom that George Lucas created, and I'm not saying he did it intentionally, I'm saying that because his first 6 movies were all white centered, it was a natural reaction that you were going to cultivate a fan that connected with those characters, so that when those characters are no longer being focused or highlighted or shown at the forefront, that fan base was going to react. Just what it is. Tony, what you got? If Kathleen Kennedy would just stop talking, it would instantly improve her and Star Wars. Don't hate strong female or Star Wars fans. Don't hate strong female characters. We hate pushing agendas and poorly written female characters and making all of the male idiots. So if that is the criticism, make that criticism. And once again, as I said, if you have constructive criticism about actual things, now I don't know what pushing agendas mean. Like, what does that mean? Be clear about that, right? Be specific about it. If you're going to talk about a criticism, don't hide behind general talking points that other toxic people are using. Okay, does that make sense? Do not hide behind, you're just making it woke, because woke has been conflated to mean a lot of negative things. So if you're going to say something like, okay, let me help those Star Wars fans, the love romance between Kelly Marie Tran's character and Finn, that was stupid. That's bad writing because it came out of nowhere. Now, if you want to talk about pushing that narrative, that's a constructive, and I would think most people might agree, that's a good way to critique. But if you're just saying, oh, you're pushing a narrative, you're pushing an agenda, what do you mean? No one knows what you mean. So if you're not clear about that, then that is going to get construed as, pushing an agenda. You know who else I've heard say that? Those other sexist people, those other racist people. So if you don't want to be confused with that, be clear, be specific, because otherwise you're going to get lumped in with the rest of them. Now, Tony, I don't know what your position is specifically. I'm just saying, if you want to be clear, say that, hey, didn't like the fact that Rey didn't have enough screen time to actually show her development. That's an actual criticism. But if you just be like, oh, they got women up there, now you sound sexist. So if you're not clear, I don't care if you're a fan or not, you got to be specific. Because if you're just throwing out terms and you're throwing out negativity without context or specificity, you're going to sound just as toxic as you claim. And no one's going to be able to tell the difference. So, do better. You don't give people reason to believe you sound just like those other male idiots and other toxic people. Stand outside of them. But thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate you. Anyway, you guys let me know. What do you think about Kathleen Kennedy's and her comments about the hostility that some of the female creatives or cast crew, whatever, that they face with the fandom? What do you think about George Lucas's comments? Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think that Star Wars was equal in some way. I don't know how, but maybe you do. Whatever you think, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. This was just a segment of one of my live chats, and if you're interested in joining in on the next one, be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications for more. I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, I'll see you all later.